Over the past couple of months, there's been a massive rise in online classes, and I don't expect it to reverse because the universities and colleges, they realize how much cheaper it is for them to run a class like this because the general administration costs will be lower, and the general campus management costs will be lower, and it's just generally cheaper for them to keep doing this, even though it's going to make your degree basically useless. And one thing I've noticed is that most universities and colleges, they don't seem to understand that exams simply do not function in an online context. No matter what you do, people will cheat. And I don't like exams in the first place, but that's not really the point of this video. Some universities are desperately trying to hold on to them by using tools like ProctorU and the Lockdown browser. And both of these tools are so intrusive that it probably wouldn't be unfair to call them malware at this point, and when they have a data leak, it is going to be a serious problem. Now, there are other options out there, but these are just two of the really popular ones, but all of them are just as intrusive as each other. So how does the Lockdown browser intend to stop you from cheating? Because this is a pretty monumental task, and I'm sure they're probably putting in a lot of thought for this. So firstly, assessments will be displayed in full screen and cannot be minimized, which sounds okay, unless it doesn't actually close after the assessment is over and locks up your system, which is entirely possible if they release an update to it and they don't patch something properly. So that's a minor problem, I guess, but it's not that bad. It will also prevent you from accessing other applications, including screen sharing and messaging applications, which is pretty much implied by not being able to let you leave the full screen mode. And also, it's going to remove things like the browser menu and toolbar options. Pretty much all you're left with is back, forward, refresh, and stop. And it sounds like all of this, might work until you remember one thing. And that one thing is that you have a phone. You're doing an online exam, and it stops you from, cheating on the computer. You're going to have a phone with you. Why can't you just cheat on the phone or, cheat on a separate laptop or just anything like that? Is it going to stop you from using a second monitor? If it doesn't stop you using a second monitor, well, maybe you could bring up something on that. Now, I presume that it's going to stop you doing that. So let's just say that second monitors don't work. You still have a phone, and you can still cheat just as well on your phone. You can still, take pictures of the exam, you can message your friends, work out the answer between your friends, and everyone is going to be doing that. And it also claims to maintain exam integrity, which basically means making sure the exam doesn't get shared around to people who it shouldn't be shared with. Now, once again, you have a phone, so you could always, take pictures of it or send the questions to other people, but let's see how they intend to stop this. So they're going to disable copying and pasting functions. That's, perfectly reasonable. A lot of websites already do that. They want to also disable printing, which, that's also perfectly reasonable. And the last thing is they want to disable screen capture functions. Now, this is marketing BS because there is literally no way they could do this because otherwise Netflix would have bought their company because Netflix is very interested in stopping people from being able to actually, record the videos that are going on their screen. So how are they going to stop things like a capture card unless they're going to turn your device into an HDCP enabled device, but you could always use an HDMI splitter and get around that? Obviously, this is nonsense. Does it have a list of, all of the video recording applications in existence and then just stop you from running them? Because what's going to stop you, say, running OBS in the background, starting it before the exam starts, and then stopping it after the exam is done? Unless it has a list of all the processes you're running on your system, which it very well might considering how intrusive this is, but there's no way they could possibly stop this without doing some of those things. And what's stopping you finding something that just isn't on their list of video capture software? Surely there's no way they can find every single video capture software that's in existence. That is completely infeasible. Now, that's enough ranting for now, but the next point is perfectly fine. An assessment can't be exited until the student submits it for grading. Sure, that's just as bad as the first one. What if it just doesn't let you quit out of it? But I've already said that. Now, the last point is incredibly egregious. So, if an assessment piece is made to work with the Lockdown browser, it cannot be accessed in another browser. So if your university decides, hey, we're going to be using Lockdown browser, you just don't have an option for using it. You have to use it or you do not pass the course. So obviously doing this on Linux would be basically impossible because most distros just don't have this level of security control built into them. So it's only available on Windows, macOS, and iOS. So that means I would have to run, say, a Windows VM. But stop right there because it has VM detection code as well. and I can't even use a remote desktop either because it has a remote desktop detection code as well. Now, obviously, VM detection code isn't going to be perfect, but if you even have it detect a VM, that's going to discourage most people. Obviously, you can configure a VM to be basically the same as hardware. A lot of people have to do this if they're doing things like malware testing, but most people are not going to put in that effort, so it's going to discourage basically everyone from doing that. So obviously, using the lockdown browser can't stop you from using your phone. So this application gets bundled with another application. So it gets bundled with something called the Respondus Monitor. And I think the Respondus Monitor might even be worse than the lockdown browser. So not only are you going to be forced to install something that could very well brick your system, that doesn't run in a VM, Respondus Monitor not just encourages, it requires students to have a webcam and a microphone turned on. So it's going to record every single one of your actions while the exam is going. So all this needs is a keylogger, and it will just be a perfect place to attack. So what happens, for example, if when the exam ends, the application's process doesn't actually end and your webcam just stays on and your microphone stays on and, I don't know, you decided to get changed or something like that? Does that not seem like a little bit of a problem? Now, it's one thing to say that this is okay to do when you're on campus, because when you're on campus, you're using hardware that doesn't belong to you, and when you're doing an exam, you already have someone monitoring you anyway. You have someone like standing over your shoulder just looking at what you're doing. So having a camera pointed at your face isn't really that different. I don't have any problem with universities and colleges using this for in-person exams, but this software is being marketed for online examinations, so you have to install this on your personal hardware, and you are forced to send a video and an audio feed of your own house, which is a massive, massive breach of privacy. And as I mentioned earlier, what happens if it just doesn't close after the exam is over and you just, I don't know, start doing banking stuff, or you start doing anything that just shouldn't be shown to the university? And not only shouldn't be shown to the university, because this is proprietary software, we have no idea how long they're storing the footage for. They could store it for a day, they could store it for a week, they could store it for a month. There is no indication of this website how long Respondus actually stores the footage for. So let's say they have a data breach, and I don't know, the software didn't close after the exam was over, and you started doing just anything that shouldn't be shown to an attacker. Is that not a problem? Does that not seem like something that you should not be doing and you should not be encouraging? So back to the lockdown browser for just a moment. If we go down to the bottom here, we'll see there is a bit of marketing material talking about 10 reasons why you should use the lockdown browser. Now, most of this stuff we've already sort of covered, but the one I wanted to mention was this right here. So it's available for Windows, Mac, and iOS. I already talked about why it's not available for Linux, but the reason why it's not available for Android is sort of the same reason. So getting a root shell on Android is really, really easy. And if someone's running, say, a custom ROM, there is no way they can guarantee their software is going to work. So they're like, you know what? We're just not going to support Android. So let's say that your exam, for whatever reason, actually needs, you know, multi-touch, or it needs just something that you can only really do on a mobile device. Let's just hope that your university has loan iPads, because otherwise you're just not going to pass the exam. And I only briefly touched on it earlier, but ProctorU basically serves as the same thing as the Respondus Monitor. And as you can see, it's actually like keeping track of the sort of stuff you're doing on your system. So I'm going to presume that ProctorU has some sort of keylogger built into it, because otherwise they're not really going to be able to determine some of these actions. So, hey, let's hope ProctorU doesn't have a data breach. Now, I don't expect anything to change, because universities, they love their examinations, even though exams just are not a good way to test people. If you want to see that someone actually knows what they're trying to talk about, get them to do an actual assignment where it's like, here's a big project about, I don't know, let's say you're doing web development. Get them to actually do something in web development. Don't give them an exam being like, here's some random theoretical questions about what you may possibly need to know, but you never actually need to know in the real world. Give them something practical where you can actually demonstrate your knowledge. But that's not going to happen. They're going to continue using this, and it's going to continue getting worse. But hey, if your university says we're going to be bringing in something like Lockdown Browser or ProctorU, try and convince them and try to push them in a different direction. Maybe try to encourage your lecturers to do more assignments or something like that. Don't let them just keep pushing this software and forcing people to use this absolute garbage. So the reason why I initially made this video is because someone in my Discord told me about a petition from the FSF, which is basically trying to petition universities to stop using software like this because it's antithetical to people's freedoms. Now, it's got like 1,000 signatures, so it's never going to get anything done, but if you do want to go and sign it, there'll be a link to it down below. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, but before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim Corbinian, Andrew Craig, Nathan Montezar, Joseph, Peter D. Road, Tony Donald, Marek, Mikkel, Nephite, Tees, and Zilva. If you want to go and support my work, there'll be some links down below to my Patreon, Subscribe, Star, Cointree, and all of that fun stuff as well. I've got my podcast, that is Tech Over Tea, available on Library and YouTube for video version, and the audio version is available anywhere you listen to audio podcasts. I've also got this channel available on Library, BitTube, and BitChute as well if you want to watch it on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.